Good morning. This hearing will come to order. I want to welcome the witnesses. Appreciate you taking the time and your testimony. Looking forward to hearing it. In today's hearing, we will examine the decision to approve the State Department's plan to construct the Foreign Affairs Security Training Center at Fort Pickett Army National Guard Base in Blackstone, Virginia. We would like to learn why this $500 million project was greenlighted even though a more cost-effective alternative was available by expanding the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, FLEXI, training complex in Glencoe, Georgia. Since 1993, the State Department has been attempting to consolidate 19 diplomatic security training facilities to provide necessary soft and hard skills training to personnel assigned to high-threat, high-risk environments. In December 2012, State Department presented OMB with a full master plan, which included construction costs for all services at a proposed cost to the taxpayer of $950 million. After consolidating several facilities in the plan, State reduced its proposal to $907 million. At OMB's request, FLEXI presented a $273 million full-service alternative that leveraged existing facilities used to train law enforcement personnel from over 90 federal agencies, including State's own diplomatic security agents. Despite the significant price difference and congressional opposition, on April 17, 2014, OMB approved a pared-down version of the State's plan, a $461 million proposal that removed all classroom-based soft skills security training, the dormitory complex, and the cafeteria. The need to provide appropriate training to State personnel is of the utmost national importance. However, after examining OMB's analysis, this committee discovered that OMB auditors recommended the administration construct State's training center at FLEXI in Glencoe, Georgia. According to OMB's own cost analysis, the FLEXI proposal represented an immediate savings of $188 million and an estimated $812 million savings over 10 years. Additionally, OMB concluded there were other benefits to the FLEXI option over the State Department proposal, including timing of construction and foreign affairs counter-threat training and life support services. Ultimately, however, the director of OMB selected State's plan even though it is more expensive and has less capabilities. In today's budgetary environment, OMB's fiscal carelessness demonstrates the need to conduct stringent oversight over the administration's project decisions to ensure taxpayers' money is not wasted in duplication. By constructing a facility only for hands-on security training, State failed to achieve its main objective, consolidation. Not only will State overspend hundreds of millions of dollars building, operating, and maintaining a new facility at Fort Pickett, but it will also have to contract and lease other facilities to provide soft skills training components. In today's hearing, witnesses will shed light on OMB's approval process, attempt to explain why State needs its own training facility when taxpayers already paid to maintain similar facilities, and describe what efforts FLEXI officials undertook to accommodate State requirements. Again, I thank the witnesses for joining us today and look forward to the testimony. Senator Carper. Patrick, before I begin my questioning, I do ask consent to enter into the record a letter with a series of questions from Congressman Earl Carter from Georgia. I'm guessing that FLEXI is in his district, so without objection, so ordered. But I will start. He's got a series of questions. I'll start my questioning with his first question, just to get it on the record. I guess this is probably for Mr. Mader. What official at OMB approved moving forward with the construction of the FAFSI back in 2014, as Ms. Patrick indicated?
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I was not at OMB back at that time frame. I only arrived at OMB in June of this past year. My understanding, and having had the opportunity now to participate in a full cycle of the budget process at OMB, that decisions are made at varying stages of that process, which basically starts in the spring and culminates with the President's budget in February. In this particular case, my understanding in preparing for the hearing was that there was a group decision on the part of senior OMB officials that, based upon the uniqueness of the hard skills training that Mr. Starr testified to, that it was best to defer the decision to the State Department because of the uniqueness of this facility.
So basically you're saying it wasn't, bureaucratically the decision should be OMB's, but they basically punted the decision to then the State Department, or basically deferred to the State Department? So
I think, Mr. Chairman, and having been in the government on the other side, on the receiving end of OMB during the budget process and now being part of it, it's a process that actually is a give and take process, and I would characterize as negotiation over time in which the parties come to an agreement that meets the needs of the mission and is done in the most efficient and effective way.
But in terms of responsibility, would that be the director of OMB would have basically made the decision to let State Department decide? Again, just, this is an interrogation. I just want to get that on the record for the congressman.
My understanding is that the group of OMB executives that made the final determination to defer included the director.
Okay. Mr. Starr, I just want to kind of go through the basics of the training. I got to get the name of it. The Foreign Affairs Counter Threat course, that is really, that's the heart of what we're trying to talk, that we're training here, correct?
It's one portion of the training, sir.
Now, is that the hard skills?
It is one portion of the hard skills training.
Okay. How many people on an annual basis does the State Department train? What are the numbers?
About 9,000 to 10,000 people a year.
Okay, and then is that a year-long training process? Is this like you go to college and you are there for 365 days, weekends off, or is this in 2-week increments, or exactly how is that? Is there like a number of man days? Or I guess you should call it person days?
The Foreign Affairs Counter Threat Training course for all Foreign Service personnel, political officers, consular officers, and as many families as we can get through is a 1-week course. We do about 140 to 150 iterations of that course every single year in order to get about 1/5 of the Foreign Service through it every single year. It's a recurring 5-year course that they will take every 5 years to give them hard skills training.
So I guess the question I'm trying to get to, how many training days per person? If you got 10, let's say just 10,000, so we can do the calculation. How many training days on average does each one of those individuals get?
Sir, I don't have the answer to that because every course is different lengths. The special agents that go through training, their initial training is 7 months long. The high threat course is 10 weeks long. RSO hard skills training is about 5 weeks long.
Okay.
The FACT course is 1 week long. That's for the majority of the personnel there. We have courses, hard skills training courses for our locally employed staff overseas that we train when we come back. And driver training can be 2 or 3 weeks long. The bodyguard training can be 5 weeks long.
Okay, so I mean, what I'm hearing is probably the longest one is about 7 months, which is pretty intensive in your facility. The other ones are a couple weeks. I mean, 2 weeks, 1 week, 5 weeks, 7 weeks, that type of thing.
The large majority of the course for the larger Foreign Service officers is 1 week, and then it goes up from there.
Okay. Again, we all acknowledge this is incredibly important that we train our diplomatic corps and their families so they can keep themselves safe. But this hearing is all about cost efficiency. So, Ms. Patrick, let me ask you, what is the cost metric you use in FLETC in terms of, what is the cost per training day, training week, and in your proposal, because you provided OMB a full-blown proposal on this entire training process. Did you condense that into your own training metrics in terms of cost, and so we can kind of analyze that?
The proposal that we gave OMB was strictly master plan based, and so everything that was in the original master plan, we assessed and conducted, actually just took their footprint and moved it to FLETC facilities with the addition of a piece of property that is owned by the Marine Corps and operated by the National Guard, which is about 25 miles north of us. And but in terms of training, we train, in 2015, we are going to train about 86,000 students. And the training that they requested from us was 20,000 student weeks. Let me explain our measure. Our measure is student weeks because we have so many different kinds of programs. Some are a week, some are 11 weeks. So we have a standard measure of student weeks. Our student weeks for Glencoe only are 86,000 student weeks. Their student weeks would be approximately 20,000 student weeks, which is about a 12% increase for us.
What do you consider a reasonable, what is your cost per student week? Do you have that breakdown?
The programs differ. Special agent training has one cost. In this case,
Do you have a range?
for the FACT training, it will be $1,600 for us to do that training.
$1,600 per student week?
Yes, per student. That's for food, lodging, and the curriculum.
So, Mr. Starr, can you, I'll save my questions for the next round. Senator Carper. Patrick, let me start again. I want to drill down on costs, and I'm sorry, Mr. Starr, you're making all these pronounces. This is the most cost beneficial alternative, and you don't know the cost. So, I mean, I'm scratching my head. Ms. Patrick, when you were saying $1,600 per training week, that's all inclusive. That includes lodging. And by the way, do you use hotels? Do you have dormitories? Do you have? I mean, how do you do that at FLETC?
We have 2,000 dormitories, 2,000 beds, dormitory space at Glencoe. We also rely on existing contracts in the community should our students exceed that number. That's single occupancy. That can be doubled as well. The $1,200 that I mentioned was for the FACT training, which is that 1-week training program, and that includes the cost of the equipment, the fuel for the vehicles, the firearms, and also includes lodging and meals and miscellaneous.
Earlier, I'd written down 1,600. I mean,
I'm sorry, 1,600.
1,600, okay.
1,600.
But again, so that's an all-inclusive cost.
All-inclusive.
That is what you would charge basically the State Department for complete training, and all they'd really have to do is get their personnel down there to the tune of maybe $400, $450 per round trip.
That's what we're charging this week to train predominantly CDC and DEA and other agencies that are going through that program.
Okay, I mean, Mr. Starr, just doing it again, a back of the envelope calculation, which is dangerous. I've run into trouble a number of times on this, but it's a Pickett, is 140 miles away, so at 55 cents a mile round trip, that's going to cost about $140, $150. Pardon? Okay, so you're going to be transporting these guys down in buses. Okay, well, hotel rooms. I mean, again, just taking $15 million divided by 20,000 training weeks times 5 days, that's about $150 a night for hotels, which you maybe get a deal and get them for less than that, but I mean, you can start racking up a whole lot more. $150 per 5 nights would be $750 plus busing fee. I mean, you can very quickly exceed the $400 airfare. Right now, you're using how many facilities to do all the training you're doing?
11 different hard skills training facilities.
And how many soft skills?
8.
So you got 19 total facilities. So you're going to you want to consolidate all of this. So you're going to consolidate the 11, you still have the 8.
Correct.
If you use FLETC, you would fully consolidate all of it.
We haven't looked at that, sir. I don't believe that that's true because we still will be doing training at the Foreign Service Institute up here. We will still be doing training with some of our other partners up here in terms of law enforcement training.
And that would have been true even with the Fort Pickett facility.
Yes.
Okay, so again, your original game plan was to consolidate as much as possible. And that was going to cost $900-some million, almost $1 billion. And then that was too expensive, so you split out the hard versus the soft. Yet FLETC basically gave you a total consolidation of which was the original concept behind the Fort Pickett facility, correct?
That is what FLETC is saying, but the numbers of personnel that we would transport that we have figured out on the cost basis is solely on the hard skills only. I think what we're doing is getting into measuring apples and oranges here, sir. When we talk about the original cost of this, we're talking about the construction costs of facilities, and that's one side of it, only one side.
But again, no, we're also trying to drill down into the per training week cost, which you don't have any idea of, and yet Ms. Patrick does. And so, she is an expert, and that facility is an expert at training people, a whole range of different training facilities. You end up developing the curriculum for a host of different training regimens, correct? I mean, talk a little bit about that.
our process in serving our clients or customers, law enforcement agencies, is to determine by their job task and the analysis of that job task. We do curriculum development conferences around that. We validate those tasks. We prioritize those tasks. We create curriculum around those tasks. And if it's specialty training or advanced training needs, then we research and identify what's the best methodology in approaching that. It's not always bricks and mortar. My experience has been that's very costly. So I look for alternative ways to achieve the same end without building, because that is the more expensive option. We use a lot of modeling and simulation and other means of training to meet our objectives.
And again, you're on, I think you said 1,700 acres of former military base?
Yes.
And you can fully do all of the hard skill training there, again, with some construction, but you'd actually be able to get those military type trainers into your facility and design a curriculum to handle their needs.
As I said, my cost estimates were based on the information I had in 2013, and if it's changed since then, I would have to again look at that. The helicopter was not something I factored in. Again, it could be done at the Townsend Bomb Range, but that would be my recommendation, just because of noise and night training.
But as an expert in training from a broad range of different curriculum, you could easily cite your cost per training week. I mean, that's just something ingrained in it. I mean, you know what that is because you're always looking at that. You're calculating it because you have to cost it out to people.
Yes.
So I'd have much greater faith that your facility is going to maintain cost efficiency versus the State Department that doesn't have a clue what it's costing.
Well, right now,
again,
our cost for lodging, meals, and miscellaneous would be sharing the cost of mowing the grass and, utilities, et cetera, is $103 a day.
So again, Mr. Starr, do you understand our concern when on one hand we've got within a government system, we've got a training facility that does a broad range of training, provided a very reasonable proposal, originally about a quarter of what the State Department was going to do, which I think put pressure on the State Department to scale back, not even do the full plan that FLETC will actually provide. So you cut it in half. You're still double the cost, and you're coming before the committee, and you don't have a clue what your per week training costs are going to be, what your lodging costs are going to be. This gives us this. Can you understand why the members of the committee are concerned about this?
Senator, yes, I can. But we're talking about apples and oranges.
In what way?
We are still going to pay per diem. The cost of the fact course.
That's factored
I'm sorry,
in
sir,
cost.
that's not true. The course of the fact course that Ms. Patrick quoted is the cost of the course. Lodging and per diem are on top of that. You're going to
No,
pay,
she's shaking her head. No, it's not. It's including the $1,600 per week.
No. No, we know what we train there, sir. We know what the costs of the course
Well, how come you know her cost, but you don't know yours?
Sir, I know that we pay per diem, we pay MI&E when we go for training at FLETC. This is part of what you do. We're currently paying $21 million a year for hard skills leases. That's our cost for that. We can cut that well in half. We can cut that tremendously and cut our student costs by consolidating in one area. But the bigger issue still, sir, is that spending money on a facility that will not meet our needs, that does not allow us to train with the military on a military type training base is what we need for the future. FLETC is a law enforcement training center and an excellent one. We train our agents there. I am not in the slightest bit impugning FLETC, but their facility that they have there is about the same size as the one that we're going to build. And then outside of the one we're going to build, we have thousands of acres that allow weapons, heavy weapons, to be fired safely and effectively, allow us to set off explosions, allow us to ready ourselves for the types of atmosphere that we're going in overseas. I would argue, sir, that the construction costs are one thing. The ongoing training costs are going to be very close in either location. But the transportation costs and the inefficiencies of moving all of our people over even a 10-year period, and GAO says this will be about $90 million in savings a year, $80 to $90 million in savings a year. So I think there's different ways to look at this. I think that it's very important that you look at the upcoming GAO report that is
Okay,
coming as well.
we will, and we'll certainly be asking the Department of State to give us more information. Ms. Patrick, real quick, did you want to respond to any of that?
My CFO said that the curriculum cost about $600. The rest is per diem, lodging, and that's at the high end on the economy. So we have a broad range. If you stay on center, it's much lower cost, and if you stay off center, it's a little higher cost. So he did the estimate based on the most expensive option.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We will have a follow-up hearing. We'll wait to read the GAO report. And I guess my request of all of you, including GAO, is work together so we are dealing with basically common formats. So we're dealing with, number of training weeks, whatever the metrics are, so we're not having, so I don't have to hear we're not, we're comparing apples to oranges here. Let's be comparing oranges to oranges, and that's my request. Let's, again, we share the same goal. We truly do. It's our responsibility to provide this oversight so that we understand it. Help us understand the decision was made. So again, work with GAO. I would really like, after that report comes out, I would really like, all of you, all three of you with GAO, let's come together, and again, with a common template and format for the information we're going to be reviewing in our next hearing, okay? So with that, this hearing record will remain open for 15 days until August 12th at 5 p.m. for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is adjourned.